The matchup that we all thought would happen at the beginning of the season is finally here, but this time it's for a national championship. One of these teams will be driving away with the championship. Could it be in the car I'm in? Probably not. That would be really odd. But, ladies and gentlemen, we have BYU and we have Hawaii going for the national championship tonight. We are joined by an all-star crew of people who can break down this match way better than I can. So let's get to them right now. We're joined by Jonathan Bates, Brandon Johnson, Cindy Lewis. We have John Hawk. We're going to be having more guests coming throughout this show. So let's get started. Cindy, I'm going to go to you first. You talk about this matchup. What stands out for you in this showdown?
Well, I think back as to the last time these two teams played back in Hawaii in March of 2020. And the first night, it was a Thursday, which is an off day for Hawaii to be playing, but because there was basketball, that was their only option. So, it wasn't the crowd that you're used to having, although, they had a pretty decent crowd, I think 5,000. But Gabby Garcia Fernandez just went off 8 aces and just took Hawaii totally out of rhythm and out of sync and out of system. But the next night, Hawaii settled down again and they had 10,300 full arena. And this is a team that really feeds off of the fan energy. And they just played really well. And I think once BYU started thinking about things that night, Hawaii wins set 3, gave them a little confidence, wins set 4. Set 5 goes 19-17. Gassman has a walk-off ace. And so this is going to be really interesting. It's going to be the rubber match of the teams, as you said, we thought would see at George Mason last year for the Final Four. I think what stands out most to me is if Hawaii can do the serve receive, if they can pass Garcia's, Gabby's serves, they're going to have a chance. Where probably the matchup that will hurt them the most is on the outside, because Hawaii's outsides, their L2s are really undersized. I mean, even L1, Colton is generously listed at 6'2". He has hops, quick arm, quick swing, but you're going to go up against a block that's going to be 6'6", 6'7", 6'9". And when Chaz Galloway's off, which he was the other night, I think it takes away a lot of options. And then you're going to get the garbage balls going to Patapunov, and he can only put away so many. And if BYU serves tough, then I think Gassman doesn't become a factor then. So I think that's, it might force Yakatella to be more offensive as the setter. And so then you come down to the setter, Will Stanley versus Tella. And I think Tella's the better blocker, more offensive. But Stanley, being a little undersized, is still a pretty good blocker for his size. So, I think it's 1 and 2, got great weapons, and I think it's going to come down to who is better on serve receive.
Jonathan, I'm not sure if there's anything else to break down after that. We can just wrap up the show there. That I was so in depth.
Yeah, we're good.
We're good. Jonathan, what else are you seeing as break in this matchup?
I think the intangibles are things that I'm looking at. And one thing that I find interesting, I'm not sure how much this is going to be a factor, is that there is one player that was on BYU's side when they last met, but now it's on the Hawaii side, and we're talking about Kanaya Kana. And I'm wondering how much insight he can give the Hawaii team in terms of his former players, in terms of like what they like to do, how to maybe even get in their heads, that sort of thing. I find that really a interesting point in this match.
All right, we're going to bring on now Brandon Johnson and John Hawk, and I'm just going to let you two break down this match as you guys typically would on the phone together. So, Brandon, John, what are you seeing as some of the key stuff in this matchup?
Good morning, everybody. It's really good to see you all. Coach Hawks, thanks for joining us. You guys you guys fell a little bit short of your goal this year, obviously, but you have a lot of experience this year. The only team to take down BYU twice, so I think you guys definitely have some insight that would be really beneficial for the fans. So, what do you think would be something that would be really beneficial for Hawaii, something that they could exploit on the BYU side?
I think initially, first thing I think about is if I'm on the Hawaii staff, I'm thinking about, with Rado's last two performances haven't been his greatest. I would want to get him in system early and set him a few clean balls, get him a couple kills, get him started on the match in a positive light, not getting junk balls early. Might not be in their control, but that would be the first thing I think about. And then I think about like attacking BYU is, they do have size at all pins, but Will Stanley's not a great blocker. So, and neither is Gabby or Esh. So I think Hawaii has an advantage attacking on the right side versus BYU. And on the other side of it, Gabby's got an advantage on Galloway and Colton. So I think the matchups are going to be pretty interesting, but I think with BYU, it's we attacked the middle of the court pretty well against them, and it wasn't necessarily the quick, it was the big. And I was surprised in the semifinal matches. I didn't see a whole lot of big from either team. So I think attacking the team down the middle of the court is going to be key.
What has impressed you most about the BYU squad this year? I know you guys took them down twice. They took you guys down a few times. Like, what has impressed you so much about them this year?
I think they blocked the ball really well, like especially out of system. So, I think with what you saw Hawaii do, I don't think they attacked out of system real well. They're going at the middle blockers. So you can't attack those guys. I think especially if those guys have time to close, you have to hit the ball off the outside hand of one of the pin blockers. So,
all right, I got one more for me, and then we can throw it to whoever else wants to jump in. We obviously know Gabby, we know Rado, we know the big names. Give me one name of someone that we should be looking out for that could be, the quote unquote X factor for the game today.
God, that's a good question. I think BYU is going to probably come out, and historically they've started out trying to get Esh involved pretty early. So I think how Esh goes early is going to also determine how BYU goes. Davide is going to get his kills, but I think if Hawaii can get to his line in transition, get a sharp ball in on first ball, I think then BYU is going to have some struggles. I don't think either team is phenomenal in serve receive. So, but BYU is going to have to attack Galloway in the serve receive. And then they're also going to have to just be sharp with fundamentals. And I think BYU's always done that. So that's what's impressed me about them. And then I think for Hawaii's side is I think they probably want to attack Gardini and serve receive. But float serves to Gardini, float serve to Esh, and float serves to Libero have proven that how BYU handles those early is going to determine how they handle in the rest of the set. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of early on in this match, kind of how each other feel each other out and, who has success early.
So, Coach, I want to bring you in and also Cindy as well on this to get your thoughts. You look at this matchup. Obviously, it's pressure any championship match that the players are going to be under, but especially these two teams. BYU's lost their last three times in the NCAA Tournament finals, and then Hawaii's playing for the entire state. They have an entire state on their shoulders. So get your thoughts as a coach. What are you doing today to help? Are you doing anything to keep the players loose so they're not, getting too absorbed in the pressure of the match? And then, Coach, I'd love to get your thoughts. And then, Cindy, if you could just get your thoughts as well on the pressure, especially Hawaii has, I think, some of the expectations on them. So, Coach.
Yeah, I think what you're trying to do is you're just trying to make sure your guys are sharp on game prep and understanding tendencies and understanding, where setters are in certain situations. And I think that's what BYU is. I think if you're pretty good with understanding where the ball is being set from, then you understand more likely where the ball is going to be hit. And that's the case for Gabby, at least more often. So I think it's just keeping the guys loose in that sense. So you get them on tendency, and then you kind of start figuring out, okay, hey, just guys, hey, this is just another game. And you try to say that as much as you can, and it's not, but I don't know. In my experience, the last couple of years, we had Dylan Misery, who we didn't expect to be as good as he was in the final, and he had 6 aces, and he was fantastic. And guys will step up tonight. It's gonna be fun to watch.
And Cindy, just get your thought. Can you give us some insight just into being on Hawaii, being from Hawaii, just how important this team is, and some of the pressure that Hawaii brings with it, playing for the entire state almost?
I think they're under tremendous pressure to bring it home. They were so disappointed in 19. I mean, Joe Worsley was just inconsolable. And, talking to his mom afterwards, and he, because both Gage and Joe spent time as little kids in the arena when Roger was the technical coordinator for the Wahine. So, and they had plenty of Hawaii ties. So they understood the importance of bringing home the national title to Hawaii. So I think that it's just an incredible pressure to be carrying the state. And I forget who mentioned it, Jonathan or Vinny, maybe you, the other day, the fact that the Wahine didn't play because of the Big West's decision not to participate in women's volleyball. And, as much as the state loves the men's team, I mean, they adore the Wahine, and that goes back to the 70s. So I do think there's some pressure that probably no other team in the country has, where they're the state's team, not just the town's team or the city's team or the area team. This is a state team. But I do think that, huge pressure. But I wanted to ask John, Coach, if you don't mind, the first time you beat BYU there was the season opener, and Stanley didn't set. But the second time at Pauley, Matatia went on that service run, and you held off 4 or 5 set points on that one. What did you see happening with BYU mentally, that all of a sudden they started doubting themselves when they couldn't get a side out?
Yeah, it's interesting. Is I think one thing I noticed with them is they don't like to be in a fight. At least that's what it appeared to be. So there was with nobody in the crowd, you can hear the benches back and forth, and somebody said something to Austin, and it ticked him off. And he went back there, and I mean, that is a hard skill to execute down the stretch like that under that kind of pressure. So I felt like just they didn't want to fight, and that was surprising. Balls were dropping, and they weren't covering necessarily good balls. And I don't know. I was a little surprised with just how they played, but that's what I saw during that stretch. Just them not wanting to fight.
Yeah, I thought that's what I saw when they lost to Hawaii in 5 in the last match of 2020, is that all of a sudden the doubts came in, and it's like, why isn't it working for us anymore? Yeah. And they historically they haven't changed a whole lot. So what we saw in that first match that we played them in Provo to what we saw in April there wasn't much different. So
well,
they just executed better.
Yeah. Well, Coach Hawk, we really thank you for joining us today to break down the stuff. You're happy to stay on if you want to, but it looks so nice behind you. I'm not sure how much you want to be on a Zoom call still with us. But, Coach, we thank you for joining us. And we're now going to bring in another coach. Ladies and gentlemen, we talk about the growth of college men's volleyball. There are going to be 7 new teams in 2022. And we're going to be we're joined by the head coaches of one of them right now, Ray Lewis of Central State, one of the HBCUs that's going to be starting up. Coach, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's always an honor to be on and chat with you.
So, Coach, I'd love to break down this match, but before we do, I got to ask you, how's everything going? You're starting up a program from scratch. You're about 7 months away, not 8 months away from that first opening match. What's going on right now with your program?
Yeah, it's been a lot to say the least. You know, I got hired in November and moved out across the country to Ohio. I'm a West Coast guy, pretty much through and through. So I've loved it so far. Super supportive administration. They're really excited, and I feel pretty blessed to be fully funded athletically. So just a lot of good things are happening. We're getting close to finalizing our roster, and we're starting to feel like we're going to have a season in the spring, and can't wait to get the guys on campus.
Well, Coach, I want to ask you about this matchup, particularly the middle attackers. Both teams kind of use them a little bit differently. When you've had an opportunity to look at this matchup, what are you seeing from the middle attackers?
I mean, I think the obvious one is Patrick Gassman. I mean, the guy is just an incredible player. He averages over a kill more per set, or about a kill more per set than either of BYU's middles. And then what I noticed and stood out so much for me is Patrick Gassman has 14 solo blocks on the season at this point. BYU's middles combined for 10 solo blocks. So just what he does in terms of disrupting the opposing team's offense through the middle of the court, I think is huge. I mean, I think his presence is going to be big. For BYU, I think it's just using their middles at the right times, really being smart about when to run their middles in transition or on first ball, and their middles being efficient and continuing to attack with range. Both the BYU's middles are pretty efficient, but you see how I think Hawaii has the advantage in terms of offense out of the middle in this match.
Yeah. So then to kind of put your coaching hat on, if you're game planning for this one, Patrick Gassman's been going off. He's had, I believe, 2 or 3 straight matches with double-digit kills, big attack percentages. What do you have to do if you're game playing, scouting this out, to stop Patrick Gassman?
I don't know that you stop Patrick Gassman, but you try to manage him as much as you can. So I think one of the things I thought Hawaii did a really good job of is running him in transition and like what we call like a middle system. So when they're 7-10 feet off, they're still kind of finding him. So you want your middles to stay home a little bit longer, make sure they can try to get up and defend when they do run him 7 to 10 feet off the net. Outside of that, I think obviously serving tough. You got to keep that ball off the net and keep the opposing team out of system. So if they can do that, then I think BYU has a good shot of lowering his efficiency in this match.
And then, Coach, we talk about the middles, but overall, what's something else that fans should be keeping an eye on in this match?
So I think for me, it's, the right size. So they're great. Both of those players, talk about Gabby, talk about Rado, like those are 2 incredible players. So what I'm interested to find out is what's blocking going to look like? What impact are Gabby and Rado going to have on the blocking side of the ball? And how efficient are BYU's and Hawaii's outsides going to be in this match? I think that's going to be a really interesting key to watch.
Yeah. All right. Well, Coach, final question. We'll let you go on this. I want to switch it back a little bit to your program, because one of the special things about your school is you are an HBCU. So can you just tell people a little bit about what it means to be an HBCU and some of the players that you're looking to bring in?
Absolutely. So I'm a historically Black college. I mean, we've been around for a long time. Our school, I think, was founded in 1887. And so it's just a place where, especially in the sport of men's volleyball, every roster kind of has the 1 or 2 Black guys on the roster. So this is an awesome opportunity to just grow diversity in the sport, to, put student athletes on campus. My roster is not going to be completely filled with Black student athletes, just any student athletes that find it a good fit. We're really excited. We have a player from Israel, Brazil, a potential Serbian coming in. But I just think promoting diversity in the game is going to be really huge, and it's something we aim to do on our campus.
Well, Coach, we want to wish you the best of luck for your season in 2022. But before we let you go, do you have a prediction for tonight?
I went back and forth about this one. Really, really, really love BYU, but I think I'm taking Hawaii in this match.
Going with the Rainbow Warriors. Well, Coach, we are so happy that you were able to join us to break down. You're welcome to stay on the Zoom call here as we continue to break down this matchup. But we're now going to be joined by a man who knows what it takes to lead a program to the NCAA tournament, and that's Coach David Hunt. And for this one, I'm going to just step on out of the way. Coach Hunt, great to join us. I'm just going to step out of the way and let Jonathan take this interview, because I feel like, Jonathan, this would just be like your typical Saturday morning conversation between the two of you.
Well, first off, if it was, I would probably be upset with David for not having Spud around. I don't see Spud.
He's right here.
Okay, there we go.
Look at
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah, he was ready for this interview and everything. He's just hanging out. He just can't hear you guys. Yeah.
Okay.
But he's
all,
right there.
all is good in the world now. Okay, good.
And I got my shirt for Vinny, so
Thank
life's
you.
good.
It's great.
Thanks. Well, it's good because it's definitely smaller than an extra large. But then when people accuse me for wearing small shirts, it's no, look, it's an extra large. So I appreciate you, Vinny.
All right, Coach. We've been dissecting this match like crazy, and I think for me, and Cindy brought this up earlier, and I'm curious how if you're Hawaii and you have some undersized outsides, how do you attack the length that BYU's block presents?
We saying that Colton and Chaz are undersized? Are we terming them as undersized?
Well, Brandon will probably agree with me. If Colton is his listed height, then I am only 200 pounds. So, yeah.
So the big one I think for Hawaii's outsides that makes them so good is not size-wise, whatever. They both jump well, but they also hit the ball extremely high across the net. So I think both of those guys have that unique ability where they play a lot higher than they're listed in terms of their ability to attack. Conversely, I've seen a lot of tall guys that they hit the ball right at the tape. So I want to say, what's the point of you being a 6'8" outside hitter that touches 11.5 feet if you're always trying to hit the ball at the tape? So I think Hawaii's guys do a great job of that. I think their setter does a great job of putting them in positions for them to attack balls with some range. And then the cool part, maybe the only cool part about seeing the side view as a coach, was you get to see how Hawaii setter keeps their quick attack off the net, right? That's really drastic, which, you have somebody like Pat that can be such a good weapon. And I thought Lewis kept pushing their quick hitters tight to the net and Hawaii was able to control them. So I thought that was interesting. Sorry to cut you off. Keep going about the size of the attackers.
No, that's fine. The other thing that obviously I think, it's cliche, is serve receive. So,
yep.
John Hawks brought this up earlier, and I totally agree that if you're Hawaii, you're probably going to try to serve Gardini, and if you are BYU, you're probably going to be serving Galloway. Easier said than done. How do you execute that?
Yeah, I mean that's what it's going to come down to, right? So we know that 85% of the game is going to be dictated on the serve pass battle. Not just, I think volleyball fans have to look at not just the aces, but the amount of times they get somebody off the net. So how many times does BYU get Hawaii in a situation where they can't set their middles? And then conversely, it's a little bit harder for BYU because they don't have to be in system to have a good offense. They don't set their middles a ton statistically. They're going to throw the ball up to Gabby. It doesn't have a lot of tempo, so getting them off the net's not really going to be affecting that. They do run a little faster in front to Eschenberg and to Gardini, so maybe that's affected. But I think both teams' ability to not get aced really comes into play. Just to keep the ball on your side and be able to get a good swing out of it, I think is going to become a big one. And yeah, a lot easier said than done when Gabby is. So, John, we were talking. I have charts and all that stuff. Gabby doesn't use the area 1 sideline, if at all. And I think everybody knows that, but you still have to pass the ball that's coming 77 miles an hour at you, which is pretty tough. And in the semifinal MPSFs, he has 4 straight aces against Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon shifted accordingly, and he hits 2 balls in a seam perfectly, and then hits a few guys in the chest. And yeah, it's tough. So I'm not quite sure how you do that. And Cindy, you would remember last year, right before the pandemic hit, I think that was the difference in that first match, BYU and Hawaii. Gabby specifically went on a run, and I thought Hawaii had shifted accordingly. Gage was in area 1 trying to take a lot of court, and it's just he's hitting these gnarly serves at him. And then night 2, he wasn't nearly as effective. He'll still get his aces, but he wasn't nearly as effective. Couldn't go on long runs, and then Hawaii ends up winning 5. So.
Well, Coach, exactly to that point is what happened when Hawaii lost to UC San Diego. Their serve receive was really off, and Gage had a really off night. and we can talk about the aces, but we don't ever chart the overpasses in the stats. And there were a number of Hawaii didn't even get a chance to have a swing because the ball was overpassed to the other side. So I think that's what happened with Gabby as well. That first night, it wasn't, yeah, he had 8 aces, but how many of those were some overpasses that their guys put back down,
Yeah. This year, I think Gabby has a fair amount of aces, but he also has, at least in the 15 matches I went back and looked at, he's got 8% overpass. And then that doesn't even factor in the amount of free balls that you're just like scrambling on your own side. Hey, we kept it on our own side. Now we're just trying to send it back over. So, yeah, I agree with you. All those things come into play. And then the ability to stop a run early, right, is huge against any good server. Hey, can we pass it to 10 feet? Can we get a good swing? Can we side out and then get that guy off the service line? A lot of times is huge, because all of a sudden second, third, fourth chance opportunities. And now you're down by a few.
So my last question before if anybody else has a question. You're the only one on this call that actually has played a tournament match in the Covelli Center. And I think the one thing that going into this match that has really stood out to me is there was 2 really, really nice long rallies on Tuesday evening, one in your match and one, of course, in the second match, Penn State and Lewis. And I feel like that only happened because of the stands being pushed in and having a lot of court around. Can you just speak to the setup and the experience this year at the Covelli Center at the championship?
Yeah, so I don't know what it's like there in other years when the bleachers are out, and I think we've sort of grown accustomed to all this space in the arena. I saw it at the Stan Sheriff Center or whatever it's named now. I don't know the other few names for it, but I saw they did the same thing. You have the scorers table where you have the game crew, and then you have the open space, and you have to figure out a way to make that comparable or whatever. And I thought the committee did a good job. When we first got there on Monday, they had different barriers set up all along the side opposite the team benches. And what they found out was if that was the case and the players couldn't run through it, that expanded the area that wasn't playable. And the committee just got together and said, hey, we want to, if the ball's around here, we want them to play it, and we want to have some longer rallies. So the committee pushed those barriers together, made it about the same size as the scorers table from across the way. And the rule was if it's on the outside of those, you can play it, run it down. I think you got to be careful for rug burns because there's carpet around the outside, which is a little bit weird. But yeah, I just thought it was, it's sort of nice to have some places where you can run down some balls. Obviously, I think we're all dying to have a time when we can have fans and the arena is packed, and it seems like it's a nice size. If you could fill that place with 3,500 or 4,000 people, it would probably be a great environment. But overall, I think the host, everybody did a great job. And I think we're all just really thankful to be at this point compared to last year where there was no volleyball and it was doomsday. So you won't hear me be critical of too much at this point.
Coach, I wanted to ask you something on with the Terraflex versus the sport court. Do you find that much of a difference? I know Hawaii, which has plays on the Terraflex, and it's a little bit of an adjustment with the sport court because, in my opinion, it's not as springy. Yep. And so I think it kind of hurts like a Cowell or a Galloway because their hops are a little impacted by it not being quite as springy. But I don't know how you see that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the jumpy, and those guys would know more, right? So I think the athletes, similar to golfers, right? They know their own game so well. Golfers know their equipment so well. The smallest little thing that's off, they could tell you. So if they are saying they're affected by it, I would trust them. Terraflex is obviously the premier sort of surface that we'd all love to play on internationally, and BYU and Hawaii both have great setups for that. The one area I do notice is it's just bizarrely sticky, right? In terms of like just your foot grabs a lot more. And there was some talk early in the week, it was really sticky, and it's not like that anymore. At least when we played on Tuesday, it was a lot better than the practice. But yeah, I think Sport Court is probably a sponsor, right? And wherever the dollars come from, we're going to do whatever. So ideally, we would all be playing on Terraflex because that's sort of the international standard that everyone has.
Yeah, I think BYU mentioned that they weren't happy because it just seemed like such a harder surface to fall on too. And it is a little tacky.
Yeah, yeah. And the odd one our guys were talking about is like if you have any sort of screening on the front of your jersey or front of your shirt, you grab and stick. And I know Grand Canyon had an issue in the year; their jersey stuck on just a hardwood floor, and guys are getting hurt. And you never want to see a time like that. I think this floor is new, so sometimes you get some warps where there's some edges that could get caught. I didn't see that with this floor, so yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, yeah.
So, Coach, it's prediction time. You obviously have played BYU several times this year. You haven't played Hawaii in a while, so we're going to put you on the spot. What's your prediction for tonight's match?
Ooh, I hope that both teams try hard and have fun. That's what my mom would say, and yeah, I'm going to go with that. Both those coaches are good friends. I couldn't come out and say, hey, I think this team's better than the other one. I will say Hawaii looked damn good on Thursday night, and BYU did not play as well as I've seen them play. If that continues tonight, I would expect it to go Hawaii's way. But yeah, I think as a volleyball fan, these are the two best teams in the country, and they should be playing each other. I would have liked to see BYU play us a sixth time because I heard the 6 times a charm for us. But yeah, we went 0-5, so we didn't earn that right. So yeah, that's my feeling.
All right. Well, we've gotten Coach David Hunt's prediction. I want to thank Coach for popping on here and chatting with us. We're going to get everyone else's predictions, but we had a ton of interviews for this pregame show. So many that we couldn't actually get everyone on the Zoom at the same time. So we're going to now jump to 2 interviews that we've done yesterday with Don Gleason of the undefeated Damon Wildcats and Jalen Reyes, the former libero of BYU. So let's check out those interviews. And we're now joined by Don Gleason of Damon University to break down the matchup that we're all talking about, Hawaii BYU. And Coach, I got to ask you, as just a fan of volleyball, you have to be excited for this showdown.
For sure. And, we watch a lot of video throughout the year of these high-level teams at our program at Damon. And, I think everybody was waiting for this matchup since last year. So better late than never, right?
Yeah. Now, you've had an opportunity. You mentioned you've seen a lot of them on video. What for you as a coach, if you were to game plan for these two teams, what's maybe the 1 or 2 things that you would focus on in your game plan?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky, right? Because for a lot of teams, you try to figure out what the weakness is, and with these guys, there's not really too much to exploit. I think, the general theme about volleyball at any level is if you can serve and pass stronger than the other team, then they're going to look a lot more human. So, if you're getting these teams to pass 10, 15 feet off, then you've got a much better shot, but they still can throw that ball up to their right sides and let them tee off. So it's still a challenge.
And for you as a coach, there's always there's always the cliche of, experience helps in big games. Experience helps. But I want to ask you as a coach, how true do you feel that is? Because we have 2 very senior-laden veteran teams going up against each other.
Well, I mean, you can look at it that way in terms of the seniors' experience. But for me, looking at this matchup, if it had occurred a year ago, it's an entirely different game because Hawaii was plugging in some new pieces, especially with a new setter running the show and Jakob. I've known the Worsley brothers since they were like 9 and 7. Their dad actually coached at the college I went to with the women's team. Sorry, lost you there.
No, you're good. You're good.
Nice. But just getting handed that Hawaii offense was a tall task last year for Jakob, and seeing how much he's grown from last year to this year, I think totally changes the game. I think just even looking at one play in their semi where he went up and faked an over on 2 and then dropped a back 1 off to Gassman. was like something he couldn't do last year on a regular basis. And now seeing the way he runs his offense, like the experience he's gained over the past year is huge for Hawaii.
So I got to ask, the Worsley brothers, that you know the Gage is maybe one of the most outgoing players in this finals. Has he always been that way? Give us a good Gage Worsley.
Oh, man. So, I mean, him running around and, Roger was coaching the women's team at RIT, and, I was there and I would help out, and Gage would be pulling their hair, spitting on them, chasing around the gym. He has not changed a bit, just has gotten a little bit bigger as he carries on the same antics.
All right, Coach, we've talked about the finals matchup, but I want to talk about your program. Hey, Coach, God bless you. You always try to schedule tough. You are willing to go anywhere, play anyone. This year was a little bit different, but can you just talk about how proud you are of your team going undefeated through the schedule that they had?
Yeah, we were definitely restricted. Being in New York State, we couldn't really venture outside of it. So the furthest we could go was playing St. Francis Brooklyn. And, they're a newer program just like us. But at the end of the day, for the guys to take care of the matches that we did have was really cool to see. And, it's cool for them to go undefeated. But the guys understand that this year was way deeper than that for us. The improvement we've shown in year 3 was the fastest rate of growth we've had in our 3 years. And we really took advantage of the reps that we got. So just really proud of the guys and how mature they stayed throughout the year.
Now, Coach, 2 questions for you to wrap up on one. We've joked about this in the past, but any chance we'll see you outside the Cavelli Center tonight with a sign saying, "We want winner"? We're the only undefeated team in the nation.
Nice. Are we like the video game secret boss that they'll have to face once they win tomorrow night? No, I mean, we understand this year. We just weren't really granted a full season. And even if we were, the path for an independent team to make it to the NCAA tournament really isn't all that realistic. And we understand those challenges, and we're part of the growing pains of men's volleyball. But, we're working hard to kind of figure out a future conference affiliation. And hopefully my guys have that road to compete in the NCAA tournament in the future.
Well, Coach, going off that, then I want to ask you about your program in 2022. From an outsider looking in, it looks like there's something special growing at Damon. So what can we expect from the Wildcats in 2022?
Yeah, we kind of joke about it. In my very biased opinion, I think we've got one of the best kept secrets going on in men's college volleyball, just in terms of the culture we have in place, the human beings we have. And we make sure that we're growing as people and supporting one another. And, next year we're going to get everybody back. The guys said that they're going to go hard this summer and train and get out on the beach. We always talk about, we want to be the most West Coast team on the East Coast. So we're hoping next year with a more robust schedule, we can put that on display.
And we're here with Ohio State men's volleyball head coach Kevin Birch. Thank you for taking time with us on Saturday morning. You probably have a perspective unlike anybody else in this tournament, that you have your offices obviously at the Covelli Center. So I guess the first thing I just wanted to touch on is just how has the experience been? It seems obviously it's a little different because of limited capacity and COVID protocols and whatnot. But for us that only watch it on the live stream, can you give us a kind of a glimpse into how the game day experience has been?
Yeah, it's it's been pretty special. I think obviously you're going to have to ask the players that are in it, but I think the exciting part for me is that we're extremely lucky to have people here at Ohio State that are extremely supportive of men's volleyball, and you can really see that in the effort they put through in this tournament. Jeannie Noman's been unbelievable throughout this whole process, and Bree Lipscomb has been running the tournament, and she's put a ton of preparation, a ton of time into making this not only go as smoothly as possible, but they've all had the perspective of how can we make this as special as possible for the athletes that are participating, which can be really hard in a COVID year, like you mentioned. So everything from the mannequins that we're putting jerseys on down below near the court, trying to get as many people as we can in here within the regulations. to try to make it as realistic of a championship experience as we can, because these young men deserve it and they worked really hard for it. And but again, I'm really proud of the people that have put so much work and time in here at Ohio State and that have represented our program so well and made this a special experience for a lot of guys.
Yeah, we can't thank enough everybody that it's put this championship on. It's been a very long journey to get to this point, and I think I speak for all of men's volleyball community that we're just happy that we've gotten to this point, and we're going to have a championship of the top two teams in the country. And I think this event has been in the making for 14 months. Let's talk about these two teams. Let's start with Hawaii. Hawaii beat UC Santa Barbara in 3 games on Thursday. What stood out to you in that match?
Patrick Gassman stood out big time. I mean, he's it's not surprising when you hear that name, but it was a little surprising to me to see a middle blocker take control of a match like he did. I thought their defense in general was pretty dang good, but I think, and he gets a lot of credit for his offense. He gets credit for his blocking too, but watching him live and seeing the reads he was making, the patience he had for net, he's a very confident young man that the game is very slow for him right now in a positive way. And I think he's going to make a big impact on this match. I think defense was certainly their strength in the semis and what won them the match. I think it's going to be their strength again tonight, and I think it's going to play a big role in the result.
And then let's talk about the BYU match. The BYU defeated Lewis in 4 games on Thursday. What stood out to you in that match?
Gabby was Gabby. I certainly think he can play better, as scary as that might sound. But he's a guy that can go on a lot of runs from the end line. He was hitting, I think he hit 178 in the match that I saw on the radar guns. He can do special things, but their balance was pretty good offensively. I think they probably had more service errors than they would have liked, and it's probably odd coming from an Ohio State coach. But I think they struggled a little bit in transition on offense, and Hawaii actually did as well, which I think could lead to some exciting long rallies and good for the viewer. But I think it's going to be interesting to see who can get an edge in the transition offensive game. I think it's going to be interesting to see what Gabby can do, because I think he's going to have to play a big role and take a heavy offensive load in the transition area.
These teams are very balanced and in a lot of ways very similar. You have both teams are very strong serving, very strong blocking, have good or very strong opposites. What matchup do you think are you going to keep an eye out on, particularly in this title match?
Well, I mean, I'm not looking at a specific matchup as much as I'm looking at somebody that's going to play well under pressure. I think you get a matchup like this where two teams are pretty good. From my experience, what I've seen in championship matches, the teams that win aren't always the best teams. The teams that win are the ones that play the best under pressure, that respond well from mistakes. Don't, I hate to say implode, but it's the opposite. The ones that excel in those situations. And obviously, when you think of those types of players, you immediately go to Rado and you go to Gabby. And so I think if I had to narrow it down to one matchup, it's going to be seeing what those guys can do. But in the end, it's going to be who's going to step up for either one of those teams and take over like Patrick did in the semis, because that's what's going to end up winning these matches. This one's tough to predict, but in the end, it's going to come down to those who play best under pressure.
I feel like both teams have a lot of, when you're talking about being under pressure in the finals, a lot of unrealized expectations or unrealized championship goals. You look at Hawaii, they lost in the 2019 national championship match. You have BYU, obviously lost to you guys in both 2016, 2017. I don't know how to really phrase this, but for both teams, why do you think they have reasons to be optimistic tonight?
Yeah, I mean, they both gotten here, and it wasn't like they just rolled over bad teams to get here. They had to beat good teams. They had to climb that hurdle in the semis to get to the finals. And they had through all year, and that was after Hawaii had an unexpected loss. They could have easily rolled over, but they didn't. They came out and played pretty well against Santa Barbara and found ways to win. I think the Hawaii match is, a perfect example of that, because they didn't play as well as they probably wanted to offensively, but they found other ways to win. And I think that's oftentimes what those teams that don't have the elephant on their back, it's the teams that are able to find ways to win, even though when they're not playing well, don't have it in the typical areas. So I think both teams have earned the right to, take that elephant off their back at the same point in time. I think, they both found ways to win, and it's going to be exciting to see how creative and how well they can adjust tonight, because they're both going to have to do the same thing again.
A couple more questions. I'm going to throw you a curveball. You played libero, and you think I would ask you about Gage Worsley, but everybody knows about Gage Worsley. I am curious what you've seen on tape and in person about Mitchell Worthington. I think he probably gets a little overshadowed, especially in this match. What do you think? What do you see from him?
Yeah, it's funny. It's a position that, oftentimes if you're good and you're solid in that position, a lot of times you're not noticed. I think Gage is kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, where he's elite, and he makes such great defensive plays that it's impossible not to notice him. But I think Mitchell has done a really good job of being really steady and being really reliable, and that's the most valuable thing you can have in a libero. And that's, to his credit, he was really good in situations against Lewis where they were tested in serve receive, that he would respond right away with a good pass and was super solid. And that's what you need in that position more than anything. And I think he's done a really good job and shown a lot of improvement.
Sounds like what I think about audio video guys at a concert or something. Like, if something goes wrong, you know who they are, but most of the time you just don't want to know who they are.
Yep.
All right,
like
let's get down to let's get down to prediction time. Again, I'll make my prediction later on our show, but these are two evenly matched teams. I don't think any result would be surprising to me, to be honest. I think with COVID and with the lack of non-conference play, I'm not sure we really know how good each team is. I mean, obviously they're the best two teams in the country, but we can't really take any time into or do a deep dive into who is better by comparing resumes. That being said, who do you have winning today?
Well, if it plays out, like it did in the semis, I would say, the one area where I thought Hawaii struggled more so than BYU necessarily in their semis was just out of system offense and in transition. So Hawaii was, based on the stats, they were pretty dependent on being in system and having to pass the net. I think with BYU being a tougher serving team, they're going to have some more errors, but I think it's going to make Hawaii pretty uncomfortable. So if I had to make a prediction, I do think it's going to go 4 or 5. But I think BYU is going to take this one in a close match.
Well, thank you for taking time with us. I know it's kind of bittersweet for you that you wish you were in the finals, but I think better times are ahead for your team. And we thank you for taking time with us off the block, and enjoy the match tonight.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, and thanks for all you guys do. We really appreciate it.
And we are here with Nebraska assistant coach and former BYU libero and former BYU assistant coach Jalen Reyes. Jalen, thank you for taking time with us off the block. Let's go back to the semifinal matches. We'll dive into Hawaii Santa Barbara first, because that was the first one. What stood out to you from that match?
I think Hawaii's serving. I thought Tile took it to him from the service line. Thought Hawaii in general did a really good job serving the ball. Kana'i Akana, another player I recruited, he did a really good job. He came in, I believe he even had an ace later in the match. So I thought that was the number one thing, was Hawaii serving. And just how dangerous of a team Hawaii is. Some of their star players, maybe they didn't play, quote unquote, their best match, but they still found a way to, beat a really good Santa Barbara team. So I think that's kind of what stood out to me from that match.
And then let's go into the second match, the BYU Lewis match. What stood out to you there?
I would say the fact that BYU, I thought, passed the ball pretty well. I know you talked about yesterday, we talked about Will needing to set the middles. I thought, predominantly BYU is going to set a ton of pin, but I thought Will did a nice job of running their two middle blockers. I think Mickey hit like 600 before he hit the net on match point, and Felipe, I think, hit somewhere in there too. And they also got set a good amount of time. So I thought Will did a really nice job of setting the middle, even from slightly off the net. And that kind of typically isn't a thing with BYU. So I thought Will did a really, really good job with that. And the fact that BYU actually, had to pass well enough to do that, that stood out to me. And then I think the play of Gabby all over the place, blocked pretty well, dug a ton of balls defensively. I thought he was always a pretty good defender, but he dug a ton of balls. I think he, if you asked him, he probably will say he didn't serve the ball that good. But he's, he always is a threat from the service line, and, he hit whatever 350 or something like that. So I think he, overall performance from Gabby was pretty good. I think those are the two things in that match for me.
What do you think of, what do you see as Hawaii's strength, or what will they try to rely on in this championship match to secure victory?
I think Hawaii is probably overall maybe a little bit better passing team. I think Gage Worsley is one of the best liberos, honestly, ever in college volleyball. So that's a big strength for them. They set the middle a little bit more. I think their middle blockers are a little bit more, both of them. Voss and Gassman are both a little bit more offensive-minded middle blockers. Not, obviously they put a block show on yesterday, but they typically get set more. So I think that's kind of be the key is, can you keep BYU off the service line? Can you somewhat stay in system and make sure, they don't have to lean on Rado? I know they're going to set Rado a ton, but can they get the two middle blockers involved? And I think they can. So that way they don't have to go to Rado over and over again. And when they do that, they actually have two really nice big hitters. I think Colton and Galloway are two really, really good big hitters. So if they're passing well and they be able to set the middle, I think it opens up a ton of stuff. Versus, if they're just having to set Rado, I think BYU's size and physicality can kind of get in front of them and affect them a little bit. Maybe a little bit more than some other teams that they were able to play this year. So I think Hawaii, this cliche serve and pass game, I think passing and keeping their setter on the net is going to be huge so they can set the middle blockers.
I'm going to put you on the spot here. You said that Gage is one of the best liberos ever, yet the Off the Block Libero of the Year award is named after Eric Shoji, who hails from your home state. How do you respond to that?
I think Eric's by far the best libero in college volleyball. One, the position's only been around since 2000. I think it was 2000 or 2001. So it hasn't been there's only been 21 seasons now with a libero. And I apologize, I might be a little biased. I think Shoji by far is the best one that's played in college. I would say Gage is probably second. I think he's that good. He will also be probably an Olympian for us, the United States. I think a libero I played against, Michael Brinkley, is probably the third. So if I had to pick three liberos that have ever played men's collegiate volleyball, I would pick those three guys in that order: Shoji, Worsley, and then Brinkley from UC Irvine.
I can't argue with that. That's a very solid top three. Let's go to the other side of that. BYU. What will they rely on to win the championship?
Tough serving. They have four guys that can go rip jump serves. Pretty good float server in Yaviainen. So Gabby, Gardini, and Eschenberg serving is going to be important to counteract Hawaii's middle blockers. And then, they're going to rely on, can they play, how well does Gabby, how many balls can Gabby kill? And being able to play fast to Gardini, especially in transition, so he can swipe or throw balls down. So I think that connection, BYU being able to pass well, to be able to set the ball fast to Gardini and be able to dig. So they like playing that, that fast ball in transition, kind of a shoot to the pin. So Gardini can either hit it or throw it down or, joust it off the block, which he's really good at. So I think they're going to kind of rely on those three things: Gabby's attacking, Gardini being able to play fast and be creative on the pin, and then be able to go back and deliver from the service line.
You coached with Sean and you recruited and coached most of these players at BYU. What are some intangibles that you think that might play into BYU's favor tomorrow?
Sean's really good at keeping them loose. So I think that's I think that's a huge key for them. I know this group's been, I would like to think Hawaii and BYU would have probably been in the Final Four last year if there was a Final Four. And, Hawaii was in it the year before against Long Beach. And this group was, for the most part, this group played in 2018 in the Final Four when we lost to UCLA. So I think there's a ton of unfinished business on both sides of the net. Both rosters feel like, okay, they should have won it last year. They could, Hawaii could have won it the year before. BYU was there, 3 years ago. So I think the team that stays loose and is able to just kind of relax and play their game. And I think that's one thing Sean Olmstead's really good at, is kind of keeping his teams relaxed and, making it feel like, hey, this is just another game. You're muted, Jonathan.
Sorry about that.
You're good.
We asked you to when we asked you to come on, we asked you to diagram a play for us. Obviously, I'm not going to make you use any instruments, whiteboard, or any videos or anything. But we talked about Gage, but earlier, but the other thing that really impressed me with Hawaii yesterday was their strong block, and obviously they're not independent of each other. You can definitely use your block to set up your libero to succeed. So I was wondering if you can kind of give us more insight on how Hawaii uses should use their block tomorrow to in connection, how to use Worsley to neutralize Gabby tomorrow.
For sure. So I think key to, I would think, if I'm one of the Hawaii coaches, I think trying to manage Gabby Garcia, I think he's going to, an opposite like that, he's going to get his kills, but can you make him a little less efficient? Can you make him a little uncomfortable? And I think one way you can do that is Gabby's typically on the right side, whether it's in the front or back, or he's typically a seam cross-court attacker. So he's usually hitting the ball cross-court to area 1, area 6, area 2. For Hawaii's sake, and that doesn't mean he won't hit line, but he's mainly hitting over, cross-court over a long period of time. The good thing Hawaii has is I think Hawaii has probably the best defender in college volleyball sitting down the line. So what Hawaii could do is Colton Caldwell, Chaz Galloway, and their 2 middle blockers, they can kind of set up more in Gabby's seam or cross-court and give Gage a little more line. And maybe they try that to slow him down. So that way they're touching a shot over and over again that Gabby typically hits. And when Gabby does come down the line, they can kind of just give it to Gage and let Gage kind of do what he does down the line. So that's kind of how I would start. Obviously, easier said than done. Obviously, there's other attackers you need to worry about. But I think with Gabby Garcia Fernandez, I think you try to affect his seam cross as much as you can, because he's kind of proven he can hit that shot over and over again. He can be a 4-time All-American doing it. So I think if you try to make him uncomfortable, play with him a little bit. But I think the more you can touch that seam cross with the block and let Gage dig line, I think that's a way you can try to slow him down a little bit.
That was quite insightful. Thank you. And because we have to end every show with prediction, I feel like this is you can't win or you can't lose, depending on how you look at it. You come from Hawaii, but you obviously played and coached at BYU. What is your prediction for tomorrow? First off, I guess let's go with how do you see the match unfolding? Not necessarily who is going to win, but how do you see these teams playing against each other?
I think it's pretty even. Like matchups, I think the opposites are a wash. I think they're probably the 2 best players in the country. Middle blockers, Hawaii's probably has a little bit of lead in the middle blocker position, and I think in the libero position. Outside hitting, I think if you put the 2 outsides together, I think BYU has a lead there. I think the teams are super evenly matched. Both teams are super experienced. Both teams are leaning on some players that probably shouldn't be in this game with the 6-year rule. I can see it going either way. I hope for men's volleyball, it's a 5-setter. That's a classic that people will be talking about, for years to come. I think it has the makings, and I think this is what everyone wanted last year. So I'm happy we got it. We got it this year. A little known fact, I grew up in the Hawaii program with my dad coaching there. So it's like 17 years cheering for UH. And now, the last 7, 8, 9 years, me being affiliated with BYU. So you're right. There's no winning and losing for me tomorrow for sure.
We want to thank Jalen Reyes for joining us. Jonathan, thanks for doing that interview. All right, it's time to get to the predictions. We've already heard from Coach Hunt. We've heard from Coach Lewis, but now we want to hear from some of the other people. So let's start us off. Cindy, who do you have in this one?
Oh, thank you so much. I am really torn. Seriously, I really am. And I'm sorry that we didn't get Jalen on live, only because he would remember when his dad was coaching the 96 team for Hawaii and playing UCLA at UCLA, and just the pressure that team had, being the first to get to the Final Four. Oh, well, the 95 team also went, but just the 96 team. I just think Hawaii, if they play loose, I think they'll, and if they can handle Gabby's serves, and if they can run the middle and make Patrick the beast that he can be, I say Hawaii in 4. Otherwise, it could be a real short night, and it could be BYU in 3. I hate to say it, I'm kind of, the way I see it is, I hate to do this officially, but I just think BYU's size overall will be having an effect on them and their serve. So I'll go BYU in 4.
And you brought up 95, Cindy, so I do have to point out, as a Ball State alum, Ball State, I believe, did beat Hawaii in the 3rd place game in 95, which interestingly is my alma mater's greatest NCAA tournament win, a 3rd place game. So
and it's the last 3rd place match ever played.
Yes, and I think Ball State's the only one that advocates to bring it back. So let's now go to Brandon Johnson. Brandon, who do you have in this one?
Well, first of all, I say we bring back 3rd place and we automatically give it to Damon. So that's my choice. Automatic write-in vote, 3rd place for Damon. So I tweeted out yesterday that I had kind of come up with the idea of writing an article about we just wanted BYU and Hawaii to play best of 7. I never got around to writing it. Life happens. We get it. From the beginning of the year, I think these teams were on a collision course. So we would have loved to see them play during the regular season, but the fact that they're playing here for the finals is, what a lot of us were expecting, and maybe not everyone in this group was hoping for, obviously, but this was a pretty expected result all in all. As Cindy was saying, this is a tough one because both teams I could easily see winning in any combination. I can easily see a sweep either way. I can see a 5-setter either way. I have been on the BYU train all year. I think that when the lights are going to shine the brightest, I think Gabby Garcia-Fernandez is going to step up, and I don't know if any team's going to have an answer for him. If he decides to be the best player in the country, he's going to be the best player in the country. So I'm going to take BYU in 4. I want to say 5, but I'll go out on a limb a little bit and say BYU in 4, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully it's a great match.
Jonathan, who do you have?
So I'm going to go on a tangent first because I can never stay on topic. You've been busy tweeting about fashion attire about the coaches all tournament long, and so I want to point out that I'm wearing what I would consider an Aloha shirt, but with BYU colors. That being said, I'm going to bring Cindy in and ask her to explain to everybody why she does not think this is an Aloha shirt.
Well, at least I got you to unbutton the top button.
No, I was going to say this is a children's show. Let's button that thing back up here.
No. Coach, I told him that he would really look like a tourist if he had it buttoned up. So we actually unbuttoned it. The only reason I was saying is because it looks like something you would buy at Costco. and it's like a rayon mix. To me, a real Aloha shirt is cotton, and that's kind of my feeling. And I mean, it's kind of an off print. Just because you threw some flowers on it doesn't make it an Aloha shirt. I'm sorry, but like I said, you buy it at Costco. I'm convinced. I go with cotton, and that's why. Okay.
Fair enough. I defer to the expert on all things Hawaiian. But to the prediction, if this goes 5 sets, I would give it to Hawaii. I don't think it goes 5 sets, and I blame Cindy for this because I was actually going into this Zoom call thinking that I would predict Hawaii, but after her opening analysis, which again, we probably could have just ended the show after that. I'm convinced that BYU's length is just going to present so many problems, and I think it's going to be BYU in 4. Plus, the other reason I'm picking BYU is, and David knows this as well as anybody else, is that my handle is MPSF bias, and how could I pick against an MPSF school, especially since an MPSF school has not won a national championship since I started with Off the Block. So, yeah.
I'm just baffled that everyone is trying to say that BYU is big and Hawaii. Like, by saying that, you're saying Hawaii is not. Hawaii's gigantic. Like, I just played matches with a 5'10" outside hitter, so all these teams are big to me. But like, that's crazy to me. Like, Hawaii, in my eyes, is just as big. And then I look at their physicality, and they have more physicality all around, in my opinion. But Hawks, let's hear your prediction.
No, I agree. I think Hawaii's right side block is big, and I think that could pose some problems for Davide and Esh. But I don't know. Dave, I think you kind of said it right. I mean, I think the team that has the least amount of aces against them is going to be at an advantage. But I would say I'm going to be a little bit more bold than Dave. He's walking the fence as always, but I'm going to say this: if it goes 5, I think Hawaii wins. If I think 3 or 4, I could see BYU winning. But I think, again, it's like what I said earlier. I think it's just how teams start. So if they can get Rado going early, then I think Hawaii's got a good shot. They're good.
Should
David,
add on the side.
I want to point out something. You're calling Spencer 5'10". He's listed at 5'11", so you actually are calling him even shorter than his listed height. I'm just saying. Go on.
I'm not the first coach to say that people's heights on rosters are overinflated. That's not a crazy take, that, right?
Yeah. I would also like to point out when we talk about size, Patrick Gassman is listed as a petite 6'10", 275-pound man. Petite. No, just kidding on that. Yeah, we talk about size. I think that it's Hawaii. All right. So my prediction, folks, as we wrap on up here, this is a tight one. It's going to be a close one. These are two good teams. We are literally splitting hairs, seeing who's the best. So I have to look to divine intervention to determine this. When I was walking out of a Target yesterday, I turned around, and what did I see over all of Columbus? A giant rainbow. Could that have been God indicating that the Rainbow Warriors are going to win? Maybe. I don't know. But it could mean something. It could mean nothing. But you know what? I'm going to say I'm going to take Hawaii to win it. Why not? Why not?
Vinny, if you would have seen a cougar in the air, I think we would have had bigger problems. So I don't know.
I'd be running for my life.
Well, wait, there was one, right, Jonathan? Someone put up a cougar on
flying cougar or something.
Yeah, I will say that's the first rainbow we've seen here in 6 months, so it could be a sign. You're onto something, Vinny.
Yeah, see, here so all right, folks. Divine intervention may play out tonight. It may not. We'll see. It's going to be a great match. Be sure to check it out. Matches on ESPNU. Go to offtheblogblog.com for all your men's volleyball coverage. And should add as well, if you don't get ESPNU radio feed, Tiff Wells is going to have it. We'll have the link on our website so you can check it out there and follow along.
Shout out to my son. Yeehaw.
We have to plug that. We got to plug that. All right, everyone. Thank you, all the coaches, for joining us. This is going to be a great night of volleyball. Enjoy, everyone.